everybody, it's Kaylin here at Full Purpose and Heart, and today I am coming with a very informal video, as if you had just come over to my house and wanted to chat with a little bit about my experience having a natural birth or an unmedicated birth, and just how I prepared for it and just how it went for me. So if you are interested in this little chat, then stay tuned and we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, so as I mentioned, this is a very informal video. I'm holding my camera, so hopefully it doesn't wiggle too much for you. I'll try to stay still so that it doesn't wiggle so much. But anyway, I just have a couple of tips or a couple of suggestions for those of you who are considering or preparing for an unmedicated birth. My first one is going to be, I really believe that the strongest asset that you have is your mind. And if you can get yourself into a mental state that you are going to deliver this baby and that you are strong enough for it and that you are prepared for it, then you really will be able to enjoy your labor and delivery experience, under the circumstances. So for me, I had to come up with a why, and that would really be my first suggestion for everybody, is you need to come up with why is it that you are electing to have an unmedicated birth? What is it about having an unmedicated birth or not having any pain relieving assistance so important for you? Come up with that reason and really solidify it in your mind. My why was extremely powerful for me, and that really was why I was successful in doing it. So my why was because I wanted to be able to have my baby and come home immediately. I didn't want to have my baby at home, but I wanted to be home and recover with my baby and not have all of the doctors and nurses needing to check my statistics and needing to check on me or check on my baby. I wanted to just be able to come home and be home. That really was the driving force behind why I was going to be having an unmedicated birth, and it was strong enough to really carry me through. So mentally being in a position where you know why you're doing it is going to be your first asset and the first thing that's really going to help you. And for most women, it's strong enough to really push you through. I really believe that if you go into your labor with this idea of like, I'm going to see how it goes, but there's going to be the option for an epidural if I need it, that 9 times out of 10 women will probably choose to have an epidural, because labor and delivery is intense. It's really hard and it's not a lot of fun. But mentally, if you're in a place that like, this is what I'm doing and it's going to only be for now and it's not going to last forever, and all of those like, mental whatever, like phrases that you can tell yourself while you're in the middle of labor and delivery, that you will be able to be successful and it will be fine. Okay. So number 1, find your why and mentally get in the game. Gosh, I feel like I could talk about that for another 20 minutes, but I'll try not to. Okay. So number 2 is to prepare yourself. For me, I went in there again with the mentality of like, I'm just going to do this. Women have been having babies for as long as there have been humanity, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to just do this. When I went in with my first 2 babies, I went in completely arrogant and no preparation at all. They were completely normal labor and deliveries. I got epidurals, and I really had no education whatsoever to do that. For this 3rd baby, and because I was having an unmedicated birth, I decided I was going to swallow a little bit of my pride and I was going to prepare myself. So I did watch several YouTube videos of other moms who have had unmedicated births and just kind of listened to some of their tips and some of the tricks that they used or anything that they were going to share or talk about, and kind of have those in my back pocket. Several times I even had like a notebook and I was taking notes of some things that kind of jumped out at me. So watching YouTube videos like this one will be helpful for you. I also took a birthing class on YouTube. So I didn't want to actually go out to a facility and take a class from a midwife or from any class instructor for a couple of reasons. 1, I didn't really have time to do it. 2, I had 2 very little ones at home, and finding childcare is really difficult for me right now. I don't have like a babysitter in my back pocket. So finding childcare for me to go by myself or for me to go with my spouse wasn't really an option, or I didn't want to like make a huge effort to try and do it. And number 3, I didn't want to pay for a class. So I didn't really go to a huge extent to try to find any classes in my local area. I'm sure that if I had made more of an effort to look, I could have potentially found some free courses, but I knew that YouTube was free, and I happened to find a really great course that was in 3 sections on YouTube. And so they were like an hour each, and it went through the whole birthing process. It went through like the last month of your pregnancy. It went through labor and delivery, and then it went through the last, or like the first few hours after your child was born. Those were really informative and super helpful. I'm going to put the link to that YouTube video below, or maybe if I can put it in the eye in the sky. Look around either in the description box or the eye up here, and for that video. It is conducted by a midwife, and she just does a really great job, and it's very informative. That was really helpful for me just to understand what my body was doing while I was going through labor and birth. I didn't take the class with my husband, so I just did it with myself. I had like a piece of paper where I took a lot of notes, and I made like little symbols next to the notes that I needed my husband to be prepared for. But I didn't really feel like it was important for him to understand it all. And that was just my personal position. And so I took a couple of notes of things that I wanted him to be aware of or to know. And then from there, I just kind of took all the information in for myself. Okay, so that would be my second tip, is to make sure that you get educated and informed. A couple of things, I'm going to give you a couple of my tips and things that I wrote down that were important for me at the end, okay? So I only have one more thing. So the other little tip or suggestion that I would give to prepare yourself for an unmedicated birth is to have a support team. For me, that was my husband and my midwife team, because you need to have people surrounding you who are going to support you in your decision to have an unmedicated birth, because they need to understand what's going on with your body, and as well as be able to know the timeline and be able to assist you as things happen. If you go to a hospital with people who are not extremely familiar with unmedicated births, then it could be a little bit more difficult. I don't know. I was very like in myself and in the moment when I was having my baby. So having a team around me who just knew what was going to happen and knew what was going on and didn't have to communicate with me was really important. And it was also important for me to have my spouse there, and he was going to be my voice. He knew everything that I wanted and everything that needed to happen, and he was the one that was talking to the midwives if he felt like something was wrong or he was concerned about something, so that I really could just escape into myself and focus on myself, and I didn't have to worry about what anybody else was doing. So that would be my third tip, is to get a good support group. And if that means that it is going to be your doctor at your regular doctor, or the pediatrician, or not pediatrician, but the OB who's going to deliver your baby, whoever it is, that they are on the same team as you, and that they're going to be able to be a support to you while you're laboring, so that you can just escape into yourself and do it yourself. Okay? So those are my 3 tips. 1, get your head in the game and find your why. 2, get educated. And 3, get a support system. Okay? So a couple of quick things that were really helpful for me. Number 1, before I went, I had written down a whole page of all of these like mantras, or they're not called mantras, but verbal affirmations that I wanted to either have read to me from my husband or to read myself or whatever. Like, I just wanted to have them in my brain. I never used them in the labor room while I was laboring, but I did know them really well and had thought of them multiple times while I was kind of preparing, just, I don't know, while I was pregnant. And, you know, while you're pregnant, you're always going to be thinking about what's coming in the end. So having those kind of in my mind all the time were helpful. I've just found them on Pinterest, printed them off, and had several things that I liked to read. At the top of that page, I put my why, because I want to come home with my baby. So that was really important to me. Excuse me. The second thing that I had was oils. I diffused oils in the room with me while I was laboring. The only oil that I really diffused was peppermint. I had a very quick labor, so I didn't really have time to like diffuse a bunch of oils or think about a lot of stuff. And so I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted because I feel like the camera's shaking a little bit. I'm trying not to shake too much, but I didn't take the time to set it up so that it was propped up. Anyway, plus we have a cloudy day today, so I'm trying to make sure that you have some sunlight so it doesn't look like I'm talking to you in the dark. Anyway, I apologize for that little jaunt. What was I saying? Okay, I was diffusing oils. The one oil that I diffused was peppermint. I was really nervous that I was going to get nauseous because with my first 2 babies, when labor really hit and I could really feel my contractions, I got nauseous really quick. And I didn't want to get nauseous, so I had peppermint diffusing in the room. And I was nauseous a little bit at the beginning while I was going to the room, and I was kind of setting up a little bit, but then I didn't notice being nauseous at all during the rest of the labor. Was that because of the peppermint? I don't know, but I, rather be safe than sorry. I also had a whole list of other oils that I had gotten the ideas from, just whatever, like searching on the internet. That was going to be helpful for me. Things that were going to help the labor move along, things that were going to help me be focused. I had like wild orange. I had grapefruit. I had balance, which is a blend from doTERRA. I had clary sage, which was supposed to help with the actual like progression of the labor to make sure things continue to move along. And then I used the peppermint oil. So I think that that's kind of a pretty good, and I had lavender too to kind of help calm your nerves and that sort of thing. Anyway, diffusing oils was also really helpful for me. That was a tip that I had heard kind of throughout the web and decided to use it, and it was helpful. Counter pressure was super important to me. I learned this from the online birthing class video that I'm going to put in that description box below that I mentioned previously. And I had my husband just put his 2 hands on the lower part of my back. And as I was kneeling, I spent most of my labor kneeling on the bed. With my elbows up on the bed, and I was kneeling on the floor, and he would just like push almost all of his body weight. I mean, we were not being soft, and he would push all of his body weight into my lower back, and it really helped with that counter pressure. I tried to use the tip that I had heard from someone else where he was just going to count really slow and low so that I could focus on his counting, but it didn't work very well because my contractions were longer than the 10 seconds that he was counting. Not because he was counting too fast, but just because my contractions were coming so close together and were coming so strongly that the counting wasn't really working for me. But the pressure did work. And it just kind of turned out that I didn't have to like tell him like, well, I guess a couple of times I did say, like push on my back. I would say push, meaning I wanted him to push down on my back. But most of the time he knew that I was having a contraction because of my third little thing that worked for me was to verbalize my contraction, I guess is the best way that I can say it. I wanted to try and have a scream-free labor. That wasn't exactly what happened, but for most of my labor, every time that the contraction came, I really had a low moan that I tried to just focus on that part of having the contraction and really like verbalize my pain, or just get the pain out through verbalization. Now, there was a huge difference between a low moan and an uncontrolled scream or shriek of pain. And anytime I could feel myself getting from like this low moan sound into like a kind of sound, I could hear myself doing that, and I immediately had to like mentally say, no, don't do that. Relax and get that like low moan sound back. So that really helped me to just kind of be able to focus on that. Most of the time throughout everything else, I couldn't really focus on anything else. I didn't know anything that the nurses were telling me or that Mark was trying to tell to the nurses. I really was just like centered in myself and focusing on myself. The other thing that I would just mention is that you really just listen to your body or feel your body, and your body just does it. And when it came time to push, that was really another like thing that I was not really sure what I was going to do, because in my first 2 babies, the doctor told me like, okay, it's time to push. So I wasn't really sure how this was going to happen. So it really just kind of happened. And to those of you who have never done it, and maybe you're watching this video like, I don't know what to expect, what should I expect? I would just tell you like, it really just happens, and you just feel your body do it. So you just push into it, and you feel the relief of the pain because you are pushing, and you're giving into that desire that your body has to kind of push the baby out. So that really wasn't anything that I had to like practice or whatever. You hear in the movies, or you see in the movies like the hypnobirth or the breathing where they like breathing. Yeah, I didn't do that. That was not necessary. breathing was something that Mark had to remind me to do a couple of times, like make sure you're breathing and relax. So those were kind of some things that he did have to remember. As I had mentioned before, when I took the birthing class, I didn't have my husband take it. There were a couple of things that I did tell him about. I made sure to tell him about the transition and the symptoms of when I was going to be going into transition, just so that he would be aware of what it was happening, and some things that I might say, and kind of, that the contractions are getting closer together. All of this information I learned from that video that's on the description box, the birthing class video. So I'm not going to share that information with you, but because I'm not a trained professional, but you can learn it, and then that's the kind of information that I gave my husband, just so that he could know, when the contractions are this long, then you know that I'm in pre-labor. When they're this long, it's in active labor. When they're this long, I'm in transition, and then everything else happens super fast after that. My whole labor was only 2.5 hours from beginning to end, so it was very, very quick, very, very painful, very, very intense. I had a very big baby, so there was a little bit of an additional help that needed to happen to get that baby out, but it was super natural. There wasn't any, tools or instruments needed, and I was able to deliver my baby on my own. And he was a huge baby, but I was still able to bring him home. He was born at 4 o'clock in the morning, and then I was home by 7. So it was very successful, and I would totally recommend it to everybody. I would even do it again. Yes, he was a huge baby, and I almost feel like I need to do it again to see if it, with a smaller baby, what it would be like. But anyway, so that's my little chat about my experience and what I did to prepare, and hopefully you found some useful information. Again, check that description box, and I'll put the link to that video that I had for my childbirthing classes, and there goes my oldest. Anyway, so hopefully you found this helpful or useful. Give me a thumbs up if you liked this video, and consider subscribing to my channel if you're interested in any of the topics that I talk about here. We talk about homeschooling, we talk about regular mothering things and tips and tricks. Right now I'm doing my 2018 Elevated campaign or project. So if you like to make goals or are a goal-oriented person, check out that video here. I'll link that in the eye in the sky as well, and you can kind of follow along on our goal-oriented journey for 2018. Anyway, thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you in another video.